If you must pay your life, would you say the same? The Sin the High Priest said. Haha. I've already stopped worrying about whether I live or die, Wang Chong nonchalantly said. As he spoke, he tilted his head upward and exuded a chilling aura. These words came from Wang Chong's heart. If he had cherished his life, he would have never expended his fortune and rushed off with several thousand brave warriors to Nanzhao. If he had cherished his life, he would have never begun to operate in Qixi and finally throw his army into the Battle of Talas despite knowing of the dangers. The matter of the symbols of the gods and the otherworldly invaders were his utmost priority. No matter what, he had to find out the truth behind all this. So, High Priest, can you tell me what this symbol is? Why was the Elam civilization destroyed? And what is going on with that destructive energy underground? Wang Chong solemnly said. As he spoke, he took out the drawing of the black eye, his own eyes brimming with anticipation. The High Priest's words implied that he knew many secrets. Moreover, this place was also extremely mysterious. The words from ancient Harappa on the metal gate were already things that ordinary people would never get the chance to interact with. Wang Chong's intuition told him that if there was one person who could reveal the truth behind all these mysteries, that person would be none other than the Sin the High Priest who had lived for centuries and resided deep below the Hyderabad mountains. Everything has a beginning, and everything has an end. There are some things that you have to find out on your own. The answer you obtain from me might not be what you seek, the High Priest said, his voice drifting through the cave. As silence pervaded his surroundings, Wang Chong felt even more sure now. Regardless of who the High Priest was, he undoubtedly knew many things. Tell me, just who are they? Did they destroy the Elam dynasty? Why did they do that? Most importantly, are these people still alive now? The last question echoed through the cave. The black eye symbol of the Elam dynasty was far too similar to the symbol Wang Chong had seen in the apocalyptic era. Wang Chong had always had a conjecture that the Book of Paimon had recorded their deeds. And if so, this was probably his only clue to track them down. If he could find these people, he might also discover the truth behind the apocalypse. This was extremely important to Wang Chong. Buzz. The cave fell silent, and the High Priest's aura immediately vanished. The mood in the cave became extremely bizarre. I did not think that you would know of these things as well. The High Priest's reply sent Wang Chong's mind reeling in shock, vast waves raging in his mind. Wang Chong had only voiced his speculations because he found those two symbols separated by thousands of years to be far too similar. But the Sin the High Priest's words had turned his speculations into reality. If you know all the answers, why ask the questions? Why? Wang Chong seemed calm on the surface, but his mind was still flabbergasted. I cannot answer you. I can only say that everything has its reasons. While you are searching for them, they are searching for you, and you have something they want. You cannot escape this. Those people will quickly find you. In the future, you yourself will hold the answers that you seek. You can only rely on yourself to seek them out. But you must be careful, the Sin the High Priest said. What? Wang Chong grimaced. He had never imagined that the High Priest would say something like this. Just what do I have that they wanted? High Priest, just what are you talking about? Wang Chong sat up straight, his eyes staring straight ahead. Wang Chong suddenly sensed that things were not developing how he had imagined. He had come to the Hyderabad mountains seeking answers on the otherworldly invaders and the eyes of the gods mentioned in the Book of Paimon. But the High Priest had answered a completely different question. Wang Chong had always believed that he had been chasing down the people behind the eyes of God, but it now seemed like the eyes of God were also chasing him. Had it been exposed that he was pursuing the secret of the eyes of God? And so the eyes of God wanted to silence him? When the time comes, you will understand. When you stare into the abyss stares back at you. Young man, if you want to retreat now, it is not too late. The High Priest seemed to be implying something. No matter what, I will never retreat. Wang Chong shook his head. Everything had its risks, and Wang Chong understood that the High Priest was warning him. This faction had once destroyed the Elam dynasty, and it now threatened his own life as well. But Wang Chong could not retreat, would not retreat. He had to understand the truth behind the calamity. A faint laugh echoed through the cave, and then silence. Wang Chong keenly understood that since the high priest had decided to protect his secrets, he would not divulge them to Wang Chong. What is going on with that energy underground? Wang Chong asked. There are some things that have existed for far longer than human history. That energy has existed for tens of thousands of years. The Hyderabad Mountains that you now see, and it's unique or exist because of it. Tens of thousands of years of imperceptible influence have resulted in these unique things, which you have seen for yourself. You can mine as much of the ore in these mountains as you want, but the energy underground, with your ability, is not something that you can approach. Moreover, this energy is extremely unstable and might explode at any time. This is also why I am here and why I stopped you, the high priest said. What? Wang Chong was so shocked that he almost stood up. The Hyderabad or the Wuxia steel could be forged into the most unique weapons in the world, and not even meteoric metal could compare. Wang Chong had always understood this, but he had never imagined that, according to the high priest, the Hyderabad Mountains and the veined Wuxia steel existed entirely due to the destructive energy he had sensed down below. How is this possible? Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. The truth the high priest had revealed was simply too unbelievable. Leave. After a long moment of silence, the true high priest spoke once more. I have already made an exception by telling you too many things. I have told you everything that I can. As for the rest, I will not answer no matter how many times you ask. You can only rely on yourself to find the truth. The cave once more fell silent, and not another noise could be heard. High priest! High priest! Wang Chong called out twice, but there was no response. Wang Chong understood that the high priest truly meant it when he said that he would not answer any more questions. After remaining in the cave for a little longer, Wang Chong sighed, stood up, and prepared to leave. Wait! As Wang Chong walked to the gates, the air suddenly rustled, and then a square metal box flew out of the darkness, guided by some invisible energy to fly in front of Wang Chong. At a glance, this metal box was simple and unremarkable, but when Wang Chong reached out to take it, he immediately felt an enormous weight. It was like this wasn't some small box, but a giant and heavy cauldron. Plush! As Wang Chong took the box, several spikes shot out from the bottom of the box and stabbed into Wang Chong's finger. After several drops of blood were absorbed into the box, the top of the box suddenly exuded a faint radiance, and then the box began to rapidly lighten until it seemed practically weightless. This is... Wang Chong stopped, shock and awe on his face. This item can help you. Take care of it. This is also a gift for all you have done to help Sindhu. The high priest's voice once more faded away, this time truly falling into complete silence. Wang Chong was silent for a moment, and then he took the box, pushed open the gates, and left. But suddenly, in a flash of light, he saw an endless starry sky. Wang Chong turned around in shock and realized that he was now standing in the Hyderabad mines. All was quiet. Besides Wang Chong, there were only the craggy stones concealed in the darkness. Everything seemed like a dream, an illusion, but the gentle breeze rustling his hair and the metal box in his hands told Wang Chong that this was no illusion. Wang Chong stood in a daze atop the Hyderabad Mountains, remaining motionless for some time. Finally, with a sweep of his sleeve, Wang Chong flew off toward his residence. Everything had returned to normal. Wang Chong understood that it would be a very long time until he was next able to meet the mysterious high priest. While Wang Chong was returning to the metal house he had erected, deep underground, dust began to cascade off the wall of the cave that Wang Chong had been in just moments ago. Something seemed to shift underneath dust, and then slowly opened. Unexpectedly, it was a pair of human eyes. No one had ever seen such eyes before, old and profound, branded with the mark of time itself. They seemed to hold all the secrets of the world. Is all this destiny? To think that after going round and round, the child of destiny would actually come to Sindhu. This is all I can help you with. The rest will depend on your own luck. The high priest muttered to himself before quickly closing his eyes once more. His voice immediately vanished, and it soon seemed as if nothing whatsoever had happened. Wang Chong quickly returned to his room. 2 candles quietly burned in the room, and the amount that they had burned showed that Wang Chong had not been gone for long. Upon closing the door, Wang Chong thought to himself for a few moments before placing the metal box in front of him. The high priest had been extremely vague, briefly touching on many topics and revealing little actual information. The only thing he had left for him was this square metal box. I only asked the high priest about the secret behind the eyes of the gods. Why did he give me this metal box? What does this all mean? Wang Chong carefully examined the metal box under the light of the candles. It was dull and gray, appearing to have been made from the crudest iron. There was nothing interesting about it. But Wang Chong quickly turned his focus to the small finger-sized crystal attached to the top of the box, the only thing that had drawn his interest. This crystal exuded a dim glow. Just what did the high priest mean with this? Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. He had tried multiple methods and had attempted to send in stellar energy through multiple directions, but the box remained unresponsive. Wang Chong had also tried to use psychic energy to probe inside, but the moment he sent it in, it would come out the other side as if the box was just empty air. After making several dozen fruitless attempts, Wang Chong put the matter aside. Buzz. A few moments later, just as Wang Chong was preparing to put the metal box aside, something strange happened. The crystal on the box suddenly exploded with light, blinking jade green. This is... Wang Chong's eyes widened as his mind cleared up. As he suspiciously inspected the box, whoosh, a gust of wind blew in. Wang Chong didn't notice anything at first, but a moment later, he smelled a light fragrance in the air. Wait, something's wrong. Wang Chong's heart trembled as he immediately covered up his nose and mouth. Wang Chong had sensed a strange odor in this gust of wind, not something that could normally be expected in regular wind. Another breeze swept in, but this time, Wang Chong was able to spot several green grains within it. Poison. Wang Chong finally understood. Bzzz. Stellar energy erupted from his body, quickly engulfing him. The candles flickered while the crystal on the metal box in Wang Chong's hand began to flash even more intensely. More and more green fog began to pour into the room, seeping in through the cracks in the steel house. In a few short moments, the room had become a sea of green. Move! There was a hoarse cry from outside, and then the door banged open. A figure wearing a black metal mask flew in like a bolt of lightning, somersaulting in the air as it flew toward Wang Chong. Humph! Wang Chong coldly snorted. Thwomp! The candles on the table immediately went out as he turned a palm toward this man in black. Bang! The 2 palms met, and an enormous attractive force exploded from Wang Chong's body. The black-masked man immediately felt his energy surging like a river into Wang Chong. Not good. He's not poisoned at all. Beneath the mask, the black-clothed man's eyes were brimming with shock. Hurry and get in here. Clothes flapped through the air as more people approached. While Wang Chong was suppressing this black-clothed man, 2 other black-clothed people grasping swords flew through the air like ghosts and approached Wang Chong from the left and right. Wang Chong grinned. Clap. With his palm, he threw the first man aside, shooting him into a steel wall like a cannonball and embedding his body into it. At the same time, the 2 other black-clothed men hit Wang Chong's stellar energy as if it was a steel barrier and became incapable of advancing any farther. Boom! Wang Chong's stellar energy exploded, sending both of the stunned men flying like they were ragdolls. These people did not have weak cultivation and were assuredly elite assassins, but at Wang Chong's level, only great general experts could pose any threat to him. But it was still far from over. After sending the 2 men flying, Wang Chong raised his head in alarm. Rumble! Without any warning, the ceiling and roof of Wang Chong's metal house were hurled into the air by an invisible energy. Immediately after, a figure descended, its aura like a gigantic ocean. Boom! Wang Chong's eyes chilled as he raised his palms overhead, clashing them with the palms of the descending figure. Winds exploded as a thick violet-black flame shot toward Wang Chong. This fire ignited stellar energy, causing it to hiss, and trails of flame, as thin as tree branches flowed along Wang Chong's stellar energy and into his body. Plumes of black smoke immediately began to rise from his body. But before these black flames could completely inflame Wang Chong's body, another stellar energy, bold and upright, erupted from Wang Chong's body like a blazing sun, knocking away the black figure that had come from above. This person somersaulted backward through the air and smoothly landed in the southeast corner of the house like a spear thrust into the ground. "It's you lot." Wang Chong's pupils constricted, his eyes becoming extremely sharp. The familiar black robes and that familiar energy, these people were exactly like the group that had driven Lu Wu into attacking the Wang clan. But the first incident had been in the Central Plains while the second was in Sindhu. Wang Chong had never imagined that these people would chase him all the way here. Buzz! Just as Wang Chong was about to pursue, 3 sounds suddenly came from the 3 other corners of the house. 3 identical figures with identical auras had appeared. It was impossible to distinguish them from each other, and all 4 had auras as vast as the ocean. "Wang Chong, you truly should not have come here." A sinister voice penetrated through the darkness, drifting and indistinct. It was impossible to tell which of the 4 had said these words. "You escaped last time, but that won't be the case this time." Another voice spoke, and then the 4 attacked in unison. They made the same movements and used the same techniques, boundless stellar energy sweeping over the world. The energy unleashed by the simultaneous attacks of the 4 elite assassins was utterly stifling. But though they attacked swiftly, Wang Chong reacted even more quickly. Boom! The images of the sun and moon appeared on his shoulders, and then the sun rapidly began to expand, its dazzling radiance engulfing Wang Chong. The stellar energy of the 4 collided against Wang Chong's manifestation of light, and not only did they fail to break through, their attacks were twisted and diverted so that they collided against and canceled out each other. After working together with his master, the demonic Emperor Old Man, to use the highest form of the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art to kill Kateba, Wang Chong had come to understand the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art even more. To Wang Chong, whether it was Yin or Yang, he could use them as he pleased, as if they were extensions of own limbs. But just as this wave of attacks was neutralized, violet-black flame surged forward from 4 directions and shrouded Wang Chong. Wang Chong's stellar energy immediately began to burn, hissing with the sound of corrosion. The violet-black flames once more began to uncontrollably spread toward Wang Chong's body. Wang Chong's bold and upright stellar energy was incapable of hindering this flame. In just a flash, Wang Chong had expended 1/20th of his stellar energy. Great shattering art! Just when the 4 streams of violet-black energy were about to reach his meridians, Wang Chong unleashed destructive energy. This energy that was even darker than the night and absorbed all light erupted from Wang Chong's body. The 4 attackers were immediately jolted away by this destructive power, and those 4 violet-black flames attempting to invade Wang Chong's body were finally halted. "This kind of flame again," Wang Chong coldly said. The sensation this energy gave him was extremely similar to the strength of Lu Wu, but it was somehow even more tyrannical. "Humph! This is not the strength of Lu Wu that you encountered before, but the flame of Ju by one meant specially to counter you. No matter how strong you are, even though you've broken into the great general level, you still cannot stop it." The leader of the black-clothed men spoke once more, but his voice was still just as indistinct and untraceable. The 4 assassins once more extended their fingers, from which 4 violet-black gouts of flame shot out. The light of these flames colored the mountains a bewitching violet, imbuing the scene with an extremely bizarre air. The strength of Ju Bai. This was a power even stronger than the strength of Lu Wu, its corrosive powers able to completely disregard the cultivation of an opponent. Even great generals could not block it. This was a special gift they had prepared just for Wang Chong. "Go!" Without the slightest hesitation, the 4 assassins began to move, leaving blurs in the room as the flames shooting out of their fingers expanded by several dozen times, the light illuminating countless craggy rocks. Bang! The violet-black flames rushed at Wang Chong from every angle. These 4 worked in perfect unison, leaving no place for Wang Chong to retreat to. The fire of Ju Bai was their strongest move. With this terrifying flame, they had killed many powerful experts, including a great general. Wang Chong would never be able to stop them. But as these four were using the fire of Zhu Bai, they suddenly heard a cold laughter. Not only did Wang Chong not try to dodge, he actually rushed straight at one of the four assassins. Boom! Before the assassin could get close, an enormous stream of energy pierced through their body like a frenzied dragon. Stellar Energy Piercer. Wang Chong immediately used one of his most powerful abilities. Piercing through stellar energy isn't a skill that only you know. Wang Chong coldly laughed as he shattered that black-clothed assassin's heart. The violet-black flames could ignore stellar energy defenses, an ability akin to Wang Chong's Stellar Energy Piercer. These black-clothed men were trying to use the violet-black flames to corrode Wang Chong's meridians. But Wang Chong didn't feel like going through all that trouble, instead killing an assassin with a single strike. This is impossible. The other three assassins were dumbfounded. Wang Chong had moved too quickly, and the assassin had fallen even more quickly. This was completely different from what they had predicted. Kill him! Red emerged in their eyes as the trio lunged at Wang Chong. At the same time, with a harsh shout, the two other black-clothed men wielding swords shouted as they shot like lightning bolts toward Wang Chong. Whoosh! Meanwhile, overhead, a vague figure began to wave around a bag, and a thick green fog was carried along by the wind toward Wang Chong. Seeking death. Wang Chong's eyes flashed with cold light. Clang! Before anyone could react, a golden beam of light shot through the air and stabbed the black-clothed assassin, spreading poison. Glarg! The man gurgled for a moment before dropping to the ground. In another flash of light, Wang Chong was replaced by three identical versions of himself. The three assassins shuddered. Despite their cultivation levels, they were completely incapable of telling which Wang Chong was real. Forget about it. Attack together. After a momentary daze, the three immediately attacked once more. The air once more hissed as three enormous gouts of violet-black flame shot forward. Each gout of flame was expanded to its largest extent, so that all three of the Wang Chongs were in its range. The three expected that this would allow them to instantly figure out which Wang Chong was the real one, but things did not go how they expected. Ah! A scream tore through the air. The three illusions of Wang Chong were extinguished, but behind one of the three assassins, a slender figure emerged, its 5 fingers gripping the assassin's neck like a steel vice and raising him into the air. White Tiger! It's that brat! The assassins immediately recognized that this person was none other than Wang Chong. Stellar energy was surging off his body as he pushed the great yin-yang heaven creation art to its limit. Violet energy rushed out of the assassin's body and into Wang Chong's. With the boost from this violet energy, Wang Chong's aura swelled, boundless vitality erupting from his body along with violet light. Not good. This bastard is absorbing the strength of Zhu Bai. The remaining black-clothed men paled in fright. The intense violet-black flames of the strength of Zhu Bai were something that not even great generals could resist. If Wang Chong could grasp this strength, they would lose any hope of contending against him. Although Wang Chong was strong, he was not terrifying, and his illusions were also nothing to fear. But if they allowed Wang Chong to absorb the strength of Zhu Bai and possess the same violet-black flames, they would be doomed. Such was the power of the great yin-yang heaven creation art. Boom! The air boomed as all the black-clothed men anxiously charged at Wang Chong. But it was already too late. The violet energy in the assassin's body was furiously surging into Wang Chong and fusing with his strength of Lu Wu. Aya! With a wretched scream, the assassin began to deflate like a punctured leather bag as his blood and energy were absorbed. The other assassins had barely managed to make it a few steps before their comrade had been sucked completely dry of the strength of Zhu Bai. What powerful energy! Wang Chong threw aside the body of the assassin and half-closed his eyes, silently experiencing the new energy in his body. Although the great yin-yang heaven creation art had absorbed many kinds of energy, he had never felt as fierce and tyrannical an energy before. It seemed like an unstoppable force that could burn away all, and yet it was also bursting with intense vitality. He had only just finished absorbing this energy, but it already felt like every cell of his body had received an enormous boost. This domineering energy filled Wang Chong's mind and made him want to roar in exultation. At this moment, two destructive gouts of violet-black flame, two sharp swords, and surging torrents of stellar energy assailed Wang Chong's body, aiming to utterly annihilate him. Is he dead? The black-clothed men were all shocked and anxious. They had originally believed that they would need to fight a bitter battle, but success had come with surprising ease. But a moment later, the violet-black flames scattered, revealing the figure of Wang Chong. His body was brimming with stellar energy, and in front of him, two peerlessly sharp swords hung in the air, several inches away from him but unable to advance any farther. Wang Chong's expression was like a sheet of ice, and his hair flying in the wind made him seem like a demon god in the darkness. Not good. Run! All the assassins immediately shivered in fear, the encroaching sense of danger exploding in their skulls and weighing on their chests. Buzz! The group immediately scattered. If even the strength of Zhu Bai was unable to deal with Wang Chong, they had lost all means of contending with him. An icy voice rang out in their ears. Humph! Think you can run? This group had reacted quickly, and when they fled, they had all run off in different directions, yet they were still too slow. Bang, bang, bang. In a cold flash of light, these black-clothed men dropped to the ground almost simultaneously. Two of them had been run through by swords, two of them had been burned to ash by violet-black flames, and the other had been sucked dry by the great yin-yang heaven creation art. Wang Chong threw the shriveled corpse in his hand to the ground and turned his head to the final black-clothed man. This man trembled, a look of fear appearing on his face, but he quickly regained his composure and coldly sneered. There's no need to trouble yourself. You won't get anything from me. The man clenched his jaw, and black flames almost instantly erupted from his body. In the blink of an eye, the man had been burned to ash. As he watched this sight, Wang Chong unclenched his fingers, the coldness in his eyes receding. Even though he had encountered this group several times now, he still had no way to deal with their suicide methods. When these men in black were in danger of being captured, they would almost immediately burn up their bodies and leave nothing for Wang Chong to find. Wang Chong quickly turned around, and at this moment, the sounds of fighting filled his ears. Kill! From the top of the mountains, he could see that the Hyderabad mountains were awash in fiery light, thick plumes of smoke rising into the air. It was apparent that countless people had invaded the Hyderabad mountains in the darkness and were wreaking havoc. Just what are these people trying to do? Countless thoughts flitted through Wang Chong's mind. He simply didn't understand why the men in black had appeared here. They had pursued him all the way to Sindhu and killed so many people. Was it all for the sake of killing him? Rumble. As he was thinking, the earth suddenly swayed and enormous energy emerged from deep underground like an erupting volcano, causing the entirety of the Hyderabad mountains to quake and shudder. This is... Wang Chong paled as he realized that the quaking was coming from the place where the high priest resided. For a moment, Wang Chong found it hard to keep his composure. This group of black-clothed men had attacked too abruptly, but Wang Chong had never expected that the high priest deep underground would also be a target of their attacks. What made this even more absurd was that the high priest's residence was extremely well hidden and the terrain of the mountain range extremely complex. Even Wang Chong had only found the high priest by sheer coincidence, and even then, he had required the high priest's invitation. How had those people managed to find the high priest and this energy? How could someone so powerful exist? Aya! Just as Wang Chong was getting worried, a terrible scream exploded from out of the earth, tearing through the night sky. With this scream, the earth ceased to rumble, and serenity and silence were restored. Wang Chong breathed a sigh of relief. That scream clearly isn't the high priest's. It's obvious that the high priest won in this intense battle. But other than a sense of relief, there was another indescribable feeling in Wang Chong's mind. I didn't think that the high priest had such a high cultivation level. From the attack just now, he had sensed that the high priest's cultivation level was far above that of a peak great general. As these thoughts flitted through his mind, Wang Chong quickly mastered his emotions and headed down the mountain. There were still many men in black wreaking havoc in the darkness. Even the Wuxian cavalry that Wang Chong had left at the base of the mountain were under attack. Clang! More than 20 meters behind Wang Chong, the two swords used by the assassins suddenly flew into the air and accompanied him down the mountain. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The two swords shot out like lightning bolts, instantly piercing through two black-clothed men, and then 3, 4, 10, 20. Wang Chong entering the battle was like a tiger set amongst a herd of sheep. Everywhere he went, black assassins fell. Less than an hour later, more than 100 black-clothed men had been killed by Wang Chong. 2 hours later, the battle was completely over. The Hyderabad mountains were strewn with the bodies of black-clothed men. But the ones who had suffered the greatest losses were the massacred miners. Lord Marquis, how should we deal with these people? At the base of the mountain, Li Sai stomped his right foot down on the back of a black-clothed man, his expression wrathful. The ambush had been too abrupt, and these men in black practiced a martial art completely different from soldiers, vicious and ruthless. Caught completely off guard, many men had been wounded or killed. But the black-clothed men had also paid a price. Not only had many of them been killed, but Li Sai had even captured some of them. Lord Marquis, let me have my people rouse and interrogate them to see where these people came from, Xue Qianjun angrily said. Wait! Wang Chong extended a palm and hurriedly stopped Xue Qianjun. Li Sai's men had only coincidentally managed to knock these men unconscious. Once they were awakened, they would immediately commit suicide. Leave this matter to me. Wang Chong immediately sent out a wave of psychic energy into the mind of a black-clothed man. Just as he expected, Wang Chong quickly encountered a seal in the man's mind. Just as expected, Wang Chong mentally nodded. These black-clothed men were strictly controlled and would probably not leave any flaw to be exploited, as he had seen just now. Although he had encountered an obstacle, it was not a very strong one. A few moments later, Wang Chong had broken the seal. The Gonka king stepped forward and whispered, Lord Marquis, how is it? Have you figured out the origin of these people? Wang Chong shook his head and shot a glance at the unconscious assassins laid out neatly on the ground. Take off their masks. His men were surprised by these words, confused as to what Wang Chong wanted with this order. However, Xue Qianjun quickly bent down and took off one of the masks. This is a Khorasani. As they stared at the curly hair, hawkish eyes, and high nose, they exchanged glances of shock. They proceeded to remove more masks and realized that these black-clothed men were a motley crew. They saw Khorasani faces, Tibetan faces, Turkic faces, Jushur Kingdom faces, and even Sindhi. All of them were left stunned by the sight of these different faces. These people are all the lowest level of assassins. They won't know many secrets, Wang Chong indifferently said. The clues he had obtained from psychic energy had been extremely limited, and from what he had learned, these assassins basically knew nothing. The men Li Sai and the Gonka king had captured would not be very useful. Li Sai, bring them with us. After saying this, Wang Chong swiftly set off in another direction. In the center of the Hyderabad mountains, within a collapsed and exposed mine, Wang Chong met Ablanadin and Arloja in the crude metal temple, as well as the substitute high priest behind them. His aura was somewhat ragged, as if he had been through some major battle. Venerable sir, how are you? Wang Chong anxiously asked. I'm doing okay. We managed to force them back, but I suffered some light injuries. But what a pity! The substitute high priest turned his head to the pile of corpses and the bloody mist hanging in the air, and sighed. Wang Chong fell silent. There was nothing that could be done about this. The miners of the Hyderabad mountains were almost all ordinary people, all of them with weak constitutions, and there were few experts in their ranks. Although Wang Chong had done his utmost, he was not able to do anything about this. By the way, is the high priest okay? Wang Chong asked. The quaking from deep underground had deeply unsettled him. The high priest is fine. He had already predicted that Lord Marquis would ask this question, so he had us wait here for you, the substitute high priest said as he bowed to Wang Chong. In addition, the high priest has asked me to pass on a message to you. Fates rise and fall, gather and disperse. Everything has its destiny. What should have been said to you has been said, and our benefactor should no longer cling so stubbornly to this matter. The substitute high priest had stymied Wang Chong's questions before he could ask them. Lord Marquis, when the high priest has made his decision, no one can change his mind. If he says that he will not see you, he will never see you. There is nothing we can do about this, Arloja and Ablonidon said. Wang Chong stood in a speechless daze for some time. Although he was very reluctant, he was compelled to give up. Understood. My deepest gratitude. After saying this, Wang Chong profoundly glanced at his surroundings. He knew that the high priest had heard his words. Whoosh! Wang Chong vanished in a flash of light as he took his leave. The night raid had been quickly brought to an end, but no one knew where these black-clothed assassins had come from or why they had attacked. It was all a complete blank. Several days later, after saying farewell to the substitute high priest and leaving behind half of the Wuxian cavalry to guard the mines, Wang Chong headed back to Karasin. 7 or 8 days later, Wang Chong arrived back at Karasin. How was it? Have they all been taken care of? Lord Marquis, following your instructions, we eliminated all the black-clothed men hiding in ambush. Alas, none of them revealed any useful information. Li Sai reported, bowing. On the journey back from the Hyderabad mountains, Wang Chong had noticed many people following him in the shadows. They had taken on a variety of disguises as they stalked Wang Chong, not realizing that none of their disguises could fool Wang Chong's eyes. Wang Chong had gradually come to understand on this journey that the unremarkable metal box the high priest had given him could accurately sense the energies of these men in black. No matter who they were or what sort of disguise they put on, Wang Chong would notice them the moment they approached. The closer they were and the stronger they were, the more frequently and intensely the crystal on the top of the box would flash. Using this together with the Stone of Destiny's ability to reveal the surrounding terrain to him, Wang Chong could even see where these black-clothed men were hiding. Wang Chong nodded. Although he didn't know where the high priest had gotten something like this, there was no doubt that he could now prepare himself against the black-clothed men with this box. Putting the matter of the black-clothed men aside, Wang Chong led his men toward the governor's mansion. A little more than half a month had passed, but Karasin had already undergone a major transformation. Wang Chong could see that the warlike mood had been swept away, and the entire city was thriving. The faces of all the people he passed by were brimming with happiness. The greatest change was in the crowds on the streets. Many Tang of the Central Plains had begun to appear in this foreign city, their clothes embroidered with the marks of their respective clans. The markets of the city had also begun to sell silk, tea leaves, porcelain, and the other handmade crafts of the Central Plains. Lord Marquis, Lord Feng is truly formidable. Those Khorassani are courteous when dealing with the Tang, and their faces are all smiles. It seems like the Khorassani have already completely accepted us. Xue Qianjun rode up from the rear, excitement on his face. Karasin was a foreign land that none of them had ever interacted with before. For Feng Chongqing to have brought relations to this level in such a short amount of time was truly incredible. Wang Chong gave a slight nod, but he was more concerned about other things. Mounted on the white-hoofed shadow, Wang Chong turned toward a school built in the Tang style. The sounds of recitation could be heard inside, but in the language of the Great Tang rather than the Khorassani language that people here were most familiar with. These voices were extremely awkward, but they were burning with passion. The seed had been planted and had already begun to bud and spread out its roots. In the future, this seed and many others like it would spread throughout Karasin, completely altering the destiny of both this place and the Central Plains. Boom! The earth suddenly began to rumble as horses began to approach Wang Chong. Wang Chong raised his head and saw that Gao Xianji, Feng Chongqing, and Banahan were riding muscular horses to welcome him. Ha! Wang Chong, how was it? Did your journey to Sinnu go smoothly? Gao Xianji was the first to reach Wang Chong. He had a relaxed and refreshed air about him, and appeared to be in an exceptionally good mood. Lord Protector General. Wang Chong faintly smiled as he trotted his horse up to meet him. Wang Chong, your plan was as effective as expected. Everything in Karasin is on the right track. In addition, the first batch of soldiers from the imperial court has already arrived at Khorasan, and the group behind it has already reached Samarkand. I am confident that they will arrive soon. Gao Xianxia stroked his beard and smiled. The more he learned about Wang Chong, the more he liked him. This was a rare talent, skilled in politics, military affairs, logistics, administration, communication, and many other fields. If he had not seen it for himself, he would have found it very hard to believe that a 17-year-old youth could be so talented. Wang Chong had not only saved his life, but the life of the entire Anxi Protectorate army. Wang Chong was someone that he was willing to die for, a most important friend. If anyone dared to attack Wang Chong, Gao Xianxia would be the first to step forward. I've already written a memorial listing all your achievements and submitted it to the imperial court. I am confident that the imperial court will soon publicly announce how you will be rewarded. Without you, we would have never been able to reach Khorasan. I am confident that the imperial court will richly reward you. Moreover, I've heard that the Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Personnel have even discussed granting you a title as a reward, Gao Xianxia said, his face beaming. There was no trace of envy, only sincere happiness for Wang Chong. Lord Protector General flatters me. A commander's duty is to lead his army, campaign on the frontier, and render service. There's nothing deserving of a title in that. Wang Chong nonchalantly said, his expression extremely calm. Whether it was the War of Nanzhao or the Battle of Talas, Wang Chong had never cared about such things. All he cared about was that he had been able to win the Battle of Talas and resolve that potential crisis. Let's go, Wang Chong said, and once more began to move. He had returned from Sindhu partially because he had resolved the matter of the Hyderabad but also because he had received a letter from Feng Chongqing. So, what exactly is going on in Khorasan? In the governor's mansion of Khorasan, Wang Chong got straight to the point. There were no outsiders present, and only the high-ranking officers of the Great Tang remained in this room. Feng Chongqing's smile quickly faded, his brows dropping down as he began to explain. Everything truly is going as Lord Protector General expected. Without the threat of Arabia, Khorasan is on the right track, but a few hidden problems have gradually begun to reveal themselves. Although the various rebel armies are extremely respectful toward our Great Tang, their relationships with each other are nothing as harmonious. In this period of time, we've already learned of several incidents in which the rebel armies have gotten in conflict with each other. Our soldiers don't share the same language and have an extremely unique status. If we carelessly interfere, we will inevitably be criticized for favoring one side and being unjust to the other. Not only that, the rebel leaders are beginning to show a difference of opinion from each other. Although they still manage to appear peaceful on the outside, an undercurrent is flowing down below. They are no longer as united as they once were. Feng Chongqing made no attempt to conceal his concerns. He could handle administrative matters, but the matters between the rebel armies were not simple right or wrong affairs. Wang Chong, this is no good omen. If we don't handle this matter properly, the coalition army might quickly splinter apart. Gao Xianxia also had an extremely worried face. The Great Tang actually didn't have many soldiers stationed in Khorasan. At least 80% of the more than 200,000 soldiers of the coalition army consisted of soldiers from the various rebel armies. If this matter were to be mishandled, the Great Tang would lose the prize it had worked so hard to obtain. Without the assistance of the rebel armies, the Great Tang would find itself incapable of withstanding the entire Arabian Empire from a place so close to Baghdad. I've done all I can to help Lord Feng resolve this matter, but it's truly very difficult. Su Hanshan chose to speak at this time. So everything I said would happen has already happened? Wang Chong calmly said. Before leaving Khorasan, Wang Chong had left a letter for Feng Chongqing, listing out several events that, if they occurred, he would need to be immediately informed about so he could return. At this time, everything Wang Chong had predicted would take place had become reality. Without far-flung problems to worry about, one was certain to find nearby problems. The threat of the Arabs had been temporarily nullified, but the internal conflicts were not as easy to handle. That's right. Although the problems aren't obvious yet, they're already beginning to sprout. If we don't promptly handle this matter, These problems will only get worse and worse until it's too late to handle them. Feng Changqing sighed. They all had experience in situations where the administrative, military, and bureaucratic systems were all stable and mature. But in this strange land of Khorasan, where they didn't share the same language as the Khorasanian rebels, they had far too little experience in dealing with such situations. I've already thought about how to handle this matter, Wang Chong calmly said. Lord Protector General, Lord Feng, inform Bahram that the Great Tang will assist them in re-establishing the Sassanid dynasty. Rumble. Wang Chong's words sent a shockwave through the minds of everyone in the hall. The Sassanid dynasty was an ancient empire that had been exterminated by the Arabs decades ago. Wang Chong was now proposing that they re-establish this ancient empire. Wang Chong, have you thought about whether His Majesty will agree? Gao Xianxia asked in shock. You've already seen the problems in the coalition army. If we don't do this, the coalition will quickly collapse. Moreover, re-establishing the Sassanid dynasty will not only allow the Great Tang to immediately gain a steady foothold, but can also win the hearts of the people and raise its prestige. We stand to only gain from this venture. In addition, we can use the same method and support the founding of small kingdoms on the border of Arabia. In this way, we can use few soldiers to greatly reduce the power of Arabia. This is the true method to resist Arabia and be rid of its threat once and for all. This will also eliminate the problems within the coalition army. Moreover, even if we support the Sassanid dynasty, we can still keep our garrison here. We might even be able to mark out an area in Khorasan to serve as our base. Wang Chong lightly said. Stationing a garrison in a vassal state was a method long ago refined in another world. Casualties were kept to a minimum while an enormous level of influence was still maintained. With this method, the Great Tang could mobilize the strength of Khorasan and the other rebel armies at any time, and perhaps to an even greater degree than at present. This was because the Great Tang was offering the ability to Khorasan and the other rebel armies to strengthen themselves and resist Arabia. This was the best option available at present. Wang Chong's explanation caused the expressions of Gao Xianxia and the other people in the hall to improve. Wang Chong, although I don't know if this is right or wrong, I can't think of any better method. We'll do as you say. At any rate, it's better than losing Khorasan, Gao Xianxia said. The people in the hall discussed many more details before swiftly dispatching a message to Bahram. What? Bahram became extremely agitated at this news, sitting straight up on his chair. As the highest commander of the Aswaran cataphracts and the great general of the highest status left from the Sassanid dynasty, Bahram had an extremely composed and steady personality. However, even he could not maintain his composure in the face of such shocking news. Re-establishing the Sassanid dynasty. Bahram had never even dared to imagine such a thing. As long as the Arabian Empire existed, it was essentially impossible for the Sassanids to re-establish their country. But deep in their hearts, this was truly something that Bahram and countless Khorasani most ardently desired. Ever since their country had been annihilated, countless Khorasani had awoken in surprise from their dreams and then fallen back to sleep in tears. My lords, Bahram does not know what to say. Bahram and all Khorasani will remember the benevolence of my lords and the Great Tang for all time. Bahram's eyes reddened, and the other Khorasani in the room also became agitated. Zamir, quickly inform Her Highness the Princess of this news. Wang Chong and Gao Xianxia glanced at each other in surprise at the word, princess. They had always known that the Sassanid imperial household still existed, but they had never expected it to be a princess. A few moments later, a gorgeous young lady with the facial characteristics of the Khorasani and long, curly hair appeared before them, giving Wang Chong and Gao Xianxia a deep bow. My lords, my deepest gratitude. Wang Chong and Gao Xianxia were both rather stunned by the sight of this Sassanid princess. Her movements were both noble and elegant, and she possessed a breathtaking beauty. In addition, she had a delicate and tender aura that made others want to fiercely protect her. Upon seeing this young lady, the two of them finally understood why Bahram and the Khorasani had kept her under such heavy guard. Princess, there is no need to be so polite. Khorasan and the Great Tang are firm allies. It is only right for us to do this, Gao Xianxia said. The gorgeous Sassanid princess nodded and turned her head to Wang Chong. And General Wang, Adia has heard much about General's fame, but I did not think that General Wang would be so young. As Adia spoke, she turned her large, round, and beautiful eyes to Wang Chong, strange emotions flitting through them. At that moment, Adia possessed such astonishing beauty that even Gao Xianxia and Baram were struck dumb. Wang Chong felt his heart thump and he hurriedly bowed. "Princess flatters me." Gao Xianxia and Wang Chong soon withdrew from the room, after which Gao Xianxia shot Wang Chong a glance and smiled. "Lord Protector General, congratulations. It seems like you'll be the son-in-law to the Emperor of the Sassanid dynasty soon. Perhaps you'll become an imperial prince or even the Emperor of the Sassanid dynasty." "Lord Gao!" exclaimed Wang Chong, riled by the ridicule and teasing in Gao Xianxi's voice. Gao Xianxia immediately beat a hasty retreat, laughing all the way. Meanwhile, in the room, Baram watched as the Sassanid Princess Adia left, a pensive look in his eyes. Princess is already an adult and probably has a few admirers now. The young Marquis of the Great Tang is handsome and heroic, as well as extremely decisive. Most importantly, he is not engaged. If the Sassanid dynasty can be re-established, it is not out of the question to marry the princess to him. The news that the Sassanid dynasty had been re-established in Khorasan sent shocks throughout the Western world. A magnitude 12 earthquake rumbling through all the lands to the west of the Tsong Mountains, including the Arabian Empire. As the strongest empire to ever border Arabia, the Sassanid dynasty had been one of the Arabian Empire's fiercest foes. Bastard! Upon hearing this news, the Caliph of Arabia, Mutasim III, clenched his fists so tightly that his fingers were on the verge of shattering. The Great Tang's motives were most sinister. He naturally understood that it was hoping to use the Sassanid Empire as a means of resisting Arabia over the long term. Damn. Someone, I don't care what price must be paid, but we must have that Wang Chong of the Great Tang torn to pieces. With Mutasim III's decree, the entire Arabian Empire began to whir to life like an enormous machine. However, given Wang Chong's current level of strength, even a place with as many experts as the Arabian Empire would find it very difficult to find someone that could deal with him. As Arabia began to move, Khorasan was awash with cheers and celebration. Countless people had spontaneously gathered together and were donating money and goods in the hopes of helping the re-establishment of the Sassanid dynasty. Wang Chong and Feng Chongqing were even more direct. They found many old Khorasani and drew up a diagram of the Sassanid dynasty's imperial palace from their descriptions. They then gathered many Khorasani and Tang craftsmen to begin rebuilding the palace. The Great Tang, in its capacity as ally, had also donated 10 million taels of gold to the Sassanid imperial household. The Sassanid dynasty had returned the favor by marking out 2 large areas in the northeast and southwest corners of Khorasan to forever serve as bases for the Great Tang army. In those regions, the Great Tang had absolute authority. Not even the Sassanid imperial household had the right to intervene. Besides that, to express their respect and gratitude for the Great Tang, Baram and the newly established Sassanid dynasty had also granted the Great Tang a most supreme right. At any time and for any reason, whenever the Great Tang willed it, they could mobilize the full force of Khorasan, including the Aswaran cataphracts. Never had complete control of the Aswaran cataphracts been given to any other entity. The firmness of the alliance between the Great Tang and Khorasan left everyone shocked. And with this alliance, the Great Tang had displayed its ability to be a powerful backer. After the Sassanid dynasty was re-established and it began to recruit soldiers on the next day, the Great Tang forged many suits of armor and weapons and offered them to the Sassanid dynasty. In addition, Wang Chong and Gao Xianxia selected 70-some veteran generals to assist the Sassanids in training soldiers. Khorasan originally had 200,000-some soldiers, but with the immense influence of the Sassanid dynasty, 200,000-some more soldiers were quickly recruited. These were spread across 4 different training grounds where they trained night and day. The Sassanid dynasty might have been destroyed, but it had been one of the strongest empires of the Western world, and the Khorasani were just as brave and pugnacious as any Arab, in some aspects even surpassing them. After a period of training, these new recruits quickly began to mature into true warriors. Cultivation now had a massive army of nearly 500,000 soldiers. Even against a powerful foe like Arabia, it now had the ability to protect itself. Everything was on the right track. With the Sassanid dynasty established, the entire coalition army became more and more united, the internal conflicts within the rebel armies weakening and fading away. The prestige of Bahram and the Sassanid dynasty was sufficient to quickly suppress the objections in the rebel army, and the rising unease was also quickly strangled in the cradle. And with the Sassanid dynasty stepping up, the Great Tang avoided interfering in the affairs of the rebel army, which could lead to the various rebel forces developing hostility toward the Great Tang. Not only that, the establishment of the Sassanid dynasty caused the other rebel armies to see hope. As long as they had the acknowledgement of the Great Tang, they would be able to establish their own empire or dynasty on the borders of Arabia, precisely what all of them yearned for. The rebel army leaders all saw hope, and they also saw the Great Tang's humility and tolerance. The Great Tang's prestige and reputation continued to expand its reach through the borders of Arabia and within the rebel armies. A month passed, but Arabia was still recovering from the severe wound inflicted on it by that terrible blizzard. In this period of time, neither the re-established Sassanid dynasty nor the various rebel armies had anything to worry about. Meanwhile, since Wang Chong had helped to re-establish the Sassanid dynasty, in return, Bahram and the other rebel leaders began to promote the spreading of the Tang language by helping Yuan Shusong and his disciples erect schools on the borders of Arabia. Yuan Shusong's Tang language schools were not just set up in Khorasan, Samarkand, and Bokhara, but throughout the border region. Each student of these schools not only had 3 meals a day provided to them but also received a subsidy. Studying in the school for 1 month could pay out as much as one would make as the lowest handicraftsman. Besides that, the students with the best grades could obtain an additional sumptuous reward. The promise of reward had many students surging into the classroom, and in a short while, the number of students increased from around 3,000 to around 7,000. This number only continued to rise as more schools were established. Everything was proceeding according to Wang Chong's plan. In the marketplace, he had noticed that even the ordinary Khorasani could use a few simple words of the Tang language to call out to the members of the great clans, all of them warm and enthusiastic, with beaming faces. It was truly difficult to believe that only a few months had passed. Wang Chong's ability to administer a city left who like Banahan and Gully astounded and admiring. Time slowly passed, with Wang Chong handling papers on one side while also guiding the development of the coalition army. Just when Wang Chong believed that everything would continue on this path for eternity, an unexpected incident upset his plans. As Wang Chong was buried in a pile of documents, a soldier of the Anxi Protectorate Army walked in and bowed. "Lord Marquis, Lord Gao has issued an invitation." All he said was that an important guest has come to the city and Milord should go and welcome him. "Oh? What sort of important guest requires me to personally welcome them? And isn't there still Lord Feng?" Wang Chong smiled, not even raising his head from the desk. He had left the administration of the city almost entirely to Feng Chongqing, and he was even more at ease now that the Sassanid dynasty had been re-established and a bureaucratic system formed. "Lord Marquis, this person is an emissary from the imperial court. Lord Feng and the other generals have already headed off to the reception hall," the Anxi Protectorate Army soldier said. This caught Wang Chong by surprise. Given the status of Gao Shenji and Feng Chongqing, Wang Chong really couldn't think of anyone with such high status that they required all ranks of the Anxi Protectorate Army to go and personally welcome them. Could it be Geshu Han? But even if Geshu Han was the only person who could sit on the same level as Gao Shenji, not even he deserved such treatment. Who is the visitor? Wang Chong put down his brush, his curiosity finally piqued. It is a eunuch from the imperial court. His surname is Bien and his name is Lingcheng, the Anxi Protectorate soldier frankly reported. He brings an imperial decree with him. What? Wang Chong's eyes narrowed when he heard the words, Bien Lingcheng. Putting down his brush entirely, he finally raised his head. His mind was in an uproar, having never imagined that he would hear this name at a time like this. "Take me there." Wang Chong immediately rose from his seat and walked over. Before he had even gotten close to the reception hall, Wang Chong could already hear a sharp voice. Lord Gao, long time no see. Lord Gao took the Sher Kingdom, defeated Kataba, and even occupied Khorasan. Your future potential cannot be measured. It seems like it won't be long before I will have to look up to Milord and follow Milord's orders. The voice was suffused with an aloof pride. Although the voice proclaimed Lord Gao, there was not the slightest hint of respect within those words. We would not dare. We would not dare. The voices that Wang Chong was familiar with sounded off in response. It's Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing. Wang Chong's expression sank. Not since he had known Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing had he ever seen them treat a person with so much respect. No, this was no longer respect, but fear and dread. The proud Gao Xianji, who had never lowered his head to Wang Chong, was now lowering his head to the owner of the shrill voice. His voice suffused with unease and fear. Haha, that doesn't seem to be the case. I wrote Milord 7 letters, but Milord did not reply to a single one, the voice said, its words dripping with sarcasm. Milord has misunderstood. Gao Xianji was only too busy with military matters and had no time to reply. Gao Xianji's voice rang out from the hall. Wang Chong's brow creased tighter and tighter as he listened, and he finally couldn't help but open the doors and enter. Within the hall, a man wearing an official's hat and the purple robes of a eunuch official was seated on a black armchair, appearing extremely prestigious and aloof. Across from him, Gao Xianji, Feng Chongqing, and the other generals of Anxi were all standing, all of them viewing this eunuch with extreme apprehension. Chang Qianli and Shi Yuanqing were ashen as they watched this official order their superiors about, but they could only swallow their anger, not daring to say a word. Buzz! Wang Chong's entrance caused the mood to suddenly shift. The eunuch seated on the armchair suddenly shot up from his seat as if a spring had been installed in his buttocks, and the Anxi generals all subtly breathed a sigh of relief. Wang Chong swept his eyes through the room and quickly understood what was going on. This extremely wealthy and sumptuously dressed eunuch official was probably none other than Bian Lingqing. The Great Tang had 3 most famous eunuchs. The first was the virtuous eunuch Gao Lisher, who had served the sage emperor for his entire life and ultimately died to express his fealty. But the 2 ranked behind him were awful things. One of them was the traitorous eunuch who served at 5th Prince Li Heng's side, Li Fugua, though he was currently still called Li Jingzhong. The third was the man before him now, Bian Lingqing. Although he didn't appear to be that famous, he actually wielded enormous power from the shadows. From a certain perspective, the second-ranked Li Jingzhong was incapable of comparing to him. The reason was very simple. Bian Lingqing had single-handedly elevated Gao Xianji, who had hitherto been suppressed and kept out of important positions by Fuming Lingcha and Tian Renwanwan, and had even assisted Gao Xianji in rising to the position of Anxi Protector General. That Gao Xianji had been able to become one of the Great Tang's top-class great generals, and be known as the Anxi War God and Wall of the Empire, was largely due to Bian Lingqing. In this aspect, Bian Lingqing was not too bad. But he who was raised by Shao He was cast down by Shao He. Although Bian Lingqing had helped Gao Xianji attain his current position, this had not been out of the kindness of his heart. At the time, Gao Xianji had secretly bribed him with an extravagant gift. This was the only and greatest stain on the young Gao Xianji's record. After taking Gao Xianji's money, Bian Lingqing worked around Fuming Lingcha and wrote 2 letters directly to the Sage Emperor, causing the Sage Emperor to finally notice Gao Xianji and allowing Gao Xianji to finally start on the path of his legendary career. But Bian Lingqing was greedy to his bones. From what Wang Chong had learned later on, Bian Lingqing was constantly extorting Gao Xianji, and his appetite only got larger with time. Gao Xianji had taken the Sher Kingdom partially for strategic reasons, but there was also no denying that he had done so to pay off Bian Lingqing. The 2 sides had been brought together by the pursuit of profit and were divided in the same way. In the end, in that chaotic world, Bian Lingqing, unable to satisfy his desires, made false accusations to obtain an imperial decree and used it to have Gao Xianji executed. A great general of a generation had been unable to exert any power in this chaotic era, instead dying at the petty hands of Bian Lingqing too. Back then, when Wang Chong had learned of what had happened to Gao Xianji, he had felt a complex mixture of emotions. In the history of the empire, Gao Xianji had definitely made his fair share of mistakes, but he was also a loyal servant of the Great Tang. Regardless, a great general like this should not have died to such a petty man. And Wang Chong only needed a glance to roughly understand the situation. Not long ago, Wang Chong and Gao Xianji had obtained 1.2 billion taels of gold from the Caliph of Arabia. After the victory at Khorasan, they had demanded another 700 million taels of gold as compensation. The Great Tang army was currently in possession of an astronomical sum. Someone of Bian Lingqing's personality had definitely smelled the blood in the water and had requested some errand so that he could run off to Khorasan. Young Marquis. As Wang Chong was thinking, Bian Lingqing was already all smiles, putting on a completely different face as he went up to welcome Wang Chong. He was no longer that arrogant and commanding figure. If he hadn't been listening in, Wang Chong would have thought them to be two different people. Clap. A palm suddenly gave Bian Lingqing's beaming face a fierce slap. Wang Chong's strike left Bian Lingqing dumbstruck, and Gao Xianji, Feng Chongqing, and the others were even more alarmed. Bian Lingqing was only a eunuch official, but he was a favorite of the Sage Emperor and had also come in the capacity of an inspector. This was an authority the Sage Emperor granted to his subordinates so that he could understand the situation on the border. Gao Xianji was so subservient to Bian Lingqing partially because of the events of the past, but it was more because of his official status and authority. Bian Lingqing was no ordinary eunuch. You hit me. Bian Lingqing covered his swelling cheek as he stared in shock at Wang Chong. Even someone like Gao Xianji had to treat him politely and not dare treat him like this. Haha! I heard a fly buzzing from outside, so I simply helped Milord kill the fly. Is there a problem? Wang Chong smiled and pinched Bian Lingqing's cheek. Gao Xianji was a Hu and didn't have much backing in the capital, so he would always have to yield. Wang Chong was different, however. He was born from a clan of ministers and generals, was the Qixi Protector General, had the protection of King Song and Duke Jiu, and was also the young Marquis personally appointed by the Sage Emperor, the true son of Heaven's disciple. And now, he had rendered yet another great service. Frankly speaking, Wang Chong really wasn't afraid of this Bian Lingqing. The authority wielded by Bian Lingqing was completely useless against Wang Chong. Bian Lingqing's face flashed green and red, but no matter how slow he was, he knew that Wang Chong was indirectly scolding him. It was clear that Wang Chong had heard what he had said to Gao Xianji. While Bian Lingqing was able to lord about in front of an important individual like Gao Xianji, he was unable to muster any sort of power in front of the young Marquis. Ha ha ha! A good strike, a good strike. Just when everyone was worried that Bian Lingqing was going to get angry, he suddenly began to laugh. Not only was Bian Lingqing not angry, he even gave Wang Chong a deep bow. If that's the case, this one must thank the young Marquis. Bian Lingqing waved his sleeve with a carefree and relaxed look on his face, as if it had been someone else who had been viciously slapped. Even though Wang Chong knew that this person was a devious minister who would smile while concealing a knife behind his back and put on a genial face while scheming one's ruin, he still felt a tinge of admiration. With this personality and his abilities, it was no wonder he was so capable and dared to make an enemy of Fuming Lingcha, pushing the Anxi Protector General Fuming Lingcha to Qixi and making him sit there for 10 years. Wang Chong. On the side, Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing were even further unsettled by this scene. They had worked with Bian Lingqing for 10 years and knew him well. The more respectful and subservient he was, the more troublesome he became. Lord Marquis, this sir is Bian Lingqing, eunuch Bian. He is a favorite of His Majesty and holds the Sage Emperor's token. His Divine Majesty granted him the titles of General of the Palace Gates and Imperial Director. Even eunuch Gao treats him with high regard. Chang Qianli couldn't help but interject at this time. The blood of generals had always run hot. These people were brash and stubborn, heedlessly pressing on despite obstacles. But one had to see who one's opponent was. No one understood why Wang Chong was so hostile to Bian Lingqing on their first meeting. Bian Lingqing was not an ordinary eunuch, and the fact that the Sage Emperor had granted him the title of General of the Palace Gates indicated just how greatly favored he was. It was exceedingly rare for a eunuch to be made a general. It was not without reason that the soldiers of the Anxi Protectorate Army treated Bian Lingqing with such reverence. Whether it was Gao Xianji, Feng Chongqing or Cheng Qianli. They were all worried that Wang Chong had offended this important eunuch with little understanding of the situation. But before Cheng Qianli could finish, Wang Chong waved his hand and shot him a comforting glance. It was fine for Bian Lingqing to act so brashly in front of the Anxi Protectorate army, but if he still harbored such thoughts in front of Wang Chong, then he would truly be seeking death. Haha, Sir Director has worked hard and achieved much, and shows great care for the Anxi Protectorate army. Once I return to the capital and meet with Eunuch Gao, I will definitely speak well of Director's achievements. Wang Chong glanced at Bian Lingqing and smiled. Whoosh! Bian Lingqing immediately paled. The name of Eunuch Gao seemed to have some magical effect on him. Although not many generals knew of him or had even heard of him, in the imperial palace, and particularly amongst the eunuch officials, this name carried an intimidating force. This was the true director of the inner court, the leader of the eunuch officials. Even Bian Lingqing would feel incredibly apprehensive upon hearing this name. Wang Chong was the young marquis much favored by the sage emperor, the son of heaven's disciple, but Bian Lingqing had never imagined that he would be so capable. From the sound of it, it seemed like he could get a meeting with the director of the inner court whenever he wanted. More importantly, Gao Lisher was his direct superior. My lord, this puny one had no such intentions. My lord and Lord Gao have both rendered great service for the country. How would this puny one dare to show disrespect? Bian Lingqing's face was ashen as he lowered his head, not daring to show the slightest rudeness. Lord Bian, didn't you bring an imperial decree? Hurry and pronounce it, Wang Chong said, staring at the rolled-up imperial decree behind Bian Lingqing. Bian Lingqing was a eunuch official and a treacherous one, but just like the fifth princes Li Jingzhong, Wang Chong would only intimidate, with no intention of immediately killing them. Whether it was the future traitorous minister Li Jingzhong or general of the palace gates Bian Lingqing, as long as they were used well, they could be extremely helpful. All that was needed was to promptly get rid of them before they began to stir up their disasters. Moreover, no one was the same forever. It all depended on how one used them. Thus, Feng Dayuan was a traitorous minister of the Sui dynasty who deceived both his superiors and subordinates. But after the Sui was destroyed and the Tang established, he became an illustrious and valued subject under Emperor Taizong. The young marquis is correct. How could this one have forgotten about such an important matter? Bian Lingqing slightly paled as he shot a glance at Wang Chong. This time he truly did appear rather afraid. At this sight, Gao Xianji, Feng Chongqing, Cheng Qianli, and the other Anxi generals finally breathed a sigh of relief. They had long ago noticed the imperial decree Bian Lingqing was carrying on his back, but Bian Lingqing had come here to make threats, and as long as he did not bring up the matter of the decree, Gao Xianji and the others could do nothing about it. In addition, although Bian Lingqing was extremely greedy, he truly had been kind to the Anxi Protectorate army. Moreover, Bian Lingqing had a special status, as only a few people in history had been eunuchs who had also been granted the rank of general. They were truly worried that Wang Chong would be unforgiving and engage in open hostilities with Bian Lingqing. Lord Bian, let me help you. Feng Chongqing saw his chance and stepped forward, helping Bian Lingqing remove the tube containing the imperial decree from his back. This small action immediately caused the mood in the hall to relax. Bian Lingqing chuckled and immediately became much more natural. Everyone, hear the decree. Bian Lingqing didn't dare to look at Wang Chong as he unrolled the golden imperial decree. The five-clawed golden dragon could faintly be seen on the decree, exuding a divine majesty. Upon seeing this decree, Gao Xianji, Feng Chongqing, Cheng Qianli, and the other Anxi generals bowed. Acceding to the will of the heavens, the emperor declares, Anxi Protector General Gao Xianji firmly persisted in Talas for several months, defeating more than 400,000 Arab soldiers and killing Ibak, Huashu Huizong, Daluan Ruozan, and others, and then led the army in advancing all the way to Karasan. For rendering this great service, Gao Xianji is promoted to Left Great General of the Golden Guards and granted the title of Duke of Qi, enjoying a salary of 6,000 dan of grain. Gao Xianji is also granted a suit of purple Ultimate Dracolian II armor, 5,000 bushels of pearls, countless agate ornaments, and a ducal residence. This matter will be proclaimed for the people of the world to admire, and to inspire the people of my great Tang. Chang Qianli is appointed Deputy Imperial Censor, enjoying a salary of 4,000 dan of grain. He is also gifted a suit of golden scale armor and 10,000 taels of gold. Feng Chongqing is granted the title of Bright Minister of the Left, enjoying a salary of 4,000 dan of grain, and is further granted 10,000 bushels of pearls. Thus is the emperor's decision. Bian Lingcheng had a solemn expression as his shrill voice echoed through the hall. As he spoke, all the Anshi generals began to grow agitated. Duke of Qi. His Majesty made Lord Protector General the Duke of Qi, and also left Great General of the Golden Guards. This is an unprecedented honor. In a flash, the people in the room were in an uproar. The title of Duke was an enormous honor. Before the Battle of Talas, Gao Xianji had already been Prefectural Duke of Miun, which was already an incredible achievement. For the great generals of the Great Tang to be granted the title of Prefectural Duke was the absolute limit, an unspoken law. No one had expected that the sage emperor would make an exception and make Gao Xianji the Duke of Qi. One had to realize that the dukes existed alongside the country, and as long as the Great Tang persisted, Gao Xianji's title could be passed on through generation after generation. It had been a long time since such an honor had been granted. Lord Gao, congratulations. His Majesty is truly quite satisfied with you this time. The Great Tang has had so many great generals in the past decades, but you are the only one who has been made a duke. Bian Lingcheng put away the imperial decree and strode forward with a beaming smile. In addition, assembled generals, the repeated victories have greatly raised the prestige of my Great Tang. The Bureau of Military Personnel and Bureau of Personnel have already prepared rewards for all of you. I am certain that it won't be long before all of you receive the reward letters from the Bureau of Military Personnel. The imperial court had its rules. Rewards for important subjects like Gao Xianji, Chang Qianli, and Feng Chongqing were directly decided by the sage emperor, determined via imperial decree, and promulgated to the world. As for the other generals, their rewards were decided by the Bureau of Military Personnel. Many thanks, my lord. Gao Xianji lowered his head and gave a respectful bow as he raised his hands to accept the decree from Bian Lingcheng. After these major battles, Gao Xianji had never expected to be made a duke. However, he quickly calmed down. Gao Xianji raised his head and asked, Lord Bian, please forgive Xianji for his audacity. Why is it that Protector General Wang has still not been rewarded? Bzzz. Gao Xianji's question immediately caused the hall to fall silent. Everyone turned to Bian Lingcheng and Wang Chong. In terms of merit, Wang Chong was truly the most meritorious subject. If not for him, Gao Xianji and the Anshi Protectorate Army would have died long ago at Talas. And whether it was in Talas or in Karasan, Wang Chong was the true commander, achieving far more than Gao Xianji had. Ha ha ha! I see that you are all anxious. The young Marquis is the Great Tang's new youthful war god, and His Majesty also greatly trusts Lord Marquis. How could His Majesty and the Imperial Court not know of his great achievements in this war? It is just that the young Marquis has rendered too great of a service. Killing Arab war god Qutayba, slaying 1 million Arab elites. Such achievements reach to the heavens. The ministers of the court, the Bureau of Military Personnel, the Bureau of Personnel, the Lord Prime Minister, and His Divine Majesty are all having headaches over how to reward Lord Marquis. The debate in court is quite intense, and so it will take some time to decide on Lord Marquis's reward. But it should be decided in about a month. Bian Lingqing smiled as he spoke. This time, his words were not one bit feigned, spoken from the bottom of his heart. He was truly afraid of Wang Chong, not merely because of his family background, but because he was greatly favored by the sage emperor and even his direct superior eunuch Gao. He could lord over Gao Xianji and grasp his weak points, but he did not dare to do so in front of Wang Chong. Bian Lingqing's words caused everyone to breathe sighs of relief. Lord Marquis, congratulations. Feng Chongqing stepped forward and bowed. Lord Marquis has rendered a great service. Even my lord was able to become the Duke of Qi. Since Lord Marquis rendered the most service in this war, I am confident that His Divine Majesty and the Imperial Court will reward Lord Marquis even more richly. The Anshi generals nodded in agreement. Feng Chongqing was correct. If Gao Xianji's achievements were enough to gain him the title of Duke of Qi, the imperial court and the sage emperor would certainly award Wang Chong even more richly. Congratulations, my lord. Congratulations. Lord Feng is correct. The imperial court is certain to richly reward my lord. People in the crowd began to speak up, each one feeling sincere happiness for Wang Chong. After sacrificing so much, Wang Chong was finally about to receive his proper reward. Wang Chong only smiled. He did not care about additional titles or rewards. Defeating Arabia and gaining Talas and Khorasan were what he truly cared about. Lord Bian, you must be tired from your journey. Why don't you go and rest? Yuan Qing, escort Lord Bian to his quarters, and take care of him well, Gao Xianji ordered with a wave of his hand. Yes, my lord. Shi Yuanqing hurriedly stepped forward. Then I must trouble my lord, Bian Lingcheng hastily said. Wang Chong said nothing, so Bian Lingcheng had no idea what he was thinking. He couldn't help but shiver in fear at Wang Chong's indifferent smile, and he did not dare remain in this hall any longer. Gao Xianji looked to Chang Qianli and the other Anxi Protectorate army generals, and said, Qianli, you are dismissed as well. A few moments later, the reception hall was empty save for Gao Xianji, Feng Chongqing, and Wang Chong. Only now did Gao Xianji turn to Wang Chong. Wang Chong, only the three of us remain. Do you have anything that you want to say? From the very start, Gao Xianji had noticed that Wang Chong seemed to have something that he wanted to talk about. This was why he had told everyone to leave. Pausing for a moment, Gao Xianji continued. Wang Chong, perhaps you don't know, but eunuch Bian. How much money did he want from you? Wang Chong interrupted. Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing were dumbstruck. Raising their heads, they saw that Wang Chong's profound eyes were fixed upon them, as if seeing through all their secrets. The hall fell into an eerie silence. Neither of them had expected that Wang Chong would start with a question like this. Gao Xianji had always kept his relationship with Bian Lingcheng a secret, and only a few people knew the truth. How did you know? Gao Xianji sternly said. There is no wall in the world that is airtight. Anyone who puts their mind to investigating it will find clues eventually. My lord's promotions are inextricably tied to that Bian Lingcheng, Wang Chong flatly said. The other two in the hall were speechless for a long time. Ha! Finally, Gao Xianji raised his head and sighed. Since Lord Wang already knows, I won't hide anything. When I was young, I let emotions guide my actions and made a mistake. This matter has constantly impeded me in the 10-some years that followed, and I've never been able to cast it off. Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing became rather sentimental as they brought up this matter from the past. There was no one that did not make errors in their youth, and Gao Xianji had also been a rather impulsive young man. He had been conceited, believing that his martial prowess and grasp of strategy far exceeded his peers, but even though he had served under Tian Renwan and Fuming Lingcha for so long and rendered such great service, he was never highly regarded. The young Gao Xianji felt compelled to take action, and though it had allowed him to become Anxi Protector General, it had also brought endless consequences. Wang Chong placed his hands behind him and got straight to the point. How much did Bian Lingcheng want from you after the battle with the Shi Kingdom? 6 million taels of gold. Feng Chongqing piped up. Buzz. Even Wang Chong couldn't help but widen his eyes at this number. For the Battle of Talas, the Bureau of Revenue had given him 10 million taels of gold. But even this had only been done after much hesitation. And yet after the battle for the Shi Kingdom, Bian Lingcheng had demanded 6 million taels of gold, more than half of what Wang Chong had required for the Battle of Talas, and one had to realize that Wang Chong had used that money to hire nearly 100,000 soldiers. And this time, Wang Chong continued. Gao Xianji continued to remain silent, and it was still Feng Chongqing who answered. 80 million taels of gold. Bastard! Even though Wang Chong had mentally prepared himself, he still couldn't help but pale at this number. 80 million taels and of gold. It was clear that Bian Lingcheng knew that Wang Chong and Gao Xianji had demanded a total of 1.9 billion taels of gold from the Arabian Empire and had started off with an initial demand of 80 million. To go from 6 million taels to 80 million was more than a tenfold increase in appetite. let alone Gao Xianji. Not even Wang Chong would be able to hide the size of such a bribe. If Bian Lingqing's appetite continued to increase in this fashion, not even the whole 1.9 billion taels would be enough to satisfy him. And if they could not satisfy Bian Lingqing, hostilities would immediately break out. This bastard is bold. Does he really think that the money we demanded from Arabia is his private property? Wang Chong was rarely enraged, but not even he could suppress himself when he learned of Bian Lingqing's avarice. If I knew that he was this greedy, I would have killed him just now. Wang Chong, no? Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing paled at these words. Bian Lingqing is the general of the palace gates, and he's an emissary of his divine majesty. To kill him is to offend the sage emperor. 80 million taels of gold was just a spoken demand, but there's no firm evidence. To recklessly kill an imperial director will be extremely disadvantageous to Protector General and the entire Wang clan. With a strong enemy waiting in the wings, we can't allow a lowly man like this to upset us. The pair hurriedly began to urge prudence. Wang Chong said nothing, but the flames of anger in his eyes grew even brighter. He finally understood why Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing had invited him to this meeting. But Wang Chong knew far more about their relationship with Bian Lingqing than this pair could imagine. Leave this matter to me. For a eunuch to falsely use imperial decrees is truly audacious. Wang Chong's eyes spat fire as he spoke. Wang Chong, you must not. Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing were startled by this display. Wang Chong glanced at the two and calmly said, "My lords, be at ease. I will not kill him, but I have my ways of dealing with this kind of eunuch official." Although his heart still burned with rage, he had not taken leave of his senses. Brute strength was not needed to deal with someone like Bian Lingqing. For a greedy person like him who had been the general of the palace gates for so long, there was no way he had restricted his appetite to solely Gao Xianji. Gao Xianji had not been the first victim, nor was he the last. There was no such thing as an airtight wall, and as long as Wang Chong could seize Bian Lingqing's weakness, Bian Lingqing would never be able to escape, no matter how capable he was. Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing examined Wang Chong. Seeing that it didn't seem like he was going to impulsively rush off and kill Bian Lingqing, they finally relaxed. Upon leaving the hall, Wang Chong quickly summoned Zhang Quebec. In addition, he wrote a letter to Yang Hongchong of the Western Region's Yang clan. The Yang clan had operated in the Western regions for many years and had many connections. If any evidence existed of Bian Lingqing's actions in the Western regions, the Yang clan was the ideal choice to seek it out. Besides this letter to the Western regions, Wang Chong also wrote letters to King Song and Yang Zhao in the capital. King Song was a member of the imperial household, and his faction in the capital was enormous. As for Yang Zhao, he had Consort Taizhen's backing, and Consort Taizhen's faction, and the favor she enjoyed in the court would make investigating a single eunuch incredibly easy. Even if Bian Lingqing had been appointed general of the palace gates by the sage emperor, he was still insignificant before Consort Taizhen. Wang Chong was confident that whether it was in the court or on the border, Bian Lingqing's greedy conduct had left behind many clues. News from Yang Hongchong came much faster than expected. Took only 3 days for Wang Chong to obtain the information he desired. 10 days later, Wang Chong received word from King Song and Yang Zhao. King Song asked no questions of Wang Chong and provided a detailed report according to Wang Chong's request. Yang Zhao, on the other hand, had sent his report along with a few sentences expressing deep curiosity. He was quite curious to know why Wang Chong was investigating one eunuch, but even so, he still provided an incredibly detailed report. "My lord, spare me. Spare me." When Wang Chong threw the pile of evidence in front of Bian Lingqing, the number 3 eunuch official of the Great Tang immediately dropped to his knees and plunged his ashen face to the ground. According to the rules of the imperial court, after announcing the imperial decree, he should have left Khorasan. But his greed and desire for the 80 million taels of gold had caused him to delay his departure for 10 some days. He had originally believed when he had received an invitation to come over that Gao Xianji had come to understand something, but he had never expected this. The stack of evidence in front of him made Bian Lingqing's heart want to leap out of his chest. his entire body to crumble into pieces. Cold sweat instantly began to trickle down from his forehead. These papers listed his various crimes of embezzlement and bribery, and how he had bought and sold official positions. There were some things here that even Bian Lingcheng wasn't sure about, but when he read them, he suddenly began to recall them. Bian Lingcheng, a trifling eunuch official like you, relied on the token given to you by His Majesty to commit crimes in the military, wantonly enriching yourself, and even daring to extort an important subject of the empire like the Anshi Protector General. Did you know that this evidence alone is enough to have you executed via 1,000 cuts? And not even death would be enough to redeem you. Wang Chong coldly glared at the prostrate Bian Lingcheng, his hands held behind his back and his face cold and hard. "Milord, spare me. Spare me." Bian Lingcheng was drenched in sweat, and he slammed his head against the floor again and again, not even realizing that his forehead was bleeding. An immense fear dominated his mind. Wang Chong's case was simply too comprehensive. Bian Lingcheng couldn't even find any place where he could retort or argue. Given Wang Chong's status, if this evidence were handed over, the only thing awaiting him was death. "Humph. Seeing as you once secretly helped Lord Gao, I'll let you keep your dog life for now. If I hear that you're threatening Lord Gao with that matter again, still trying to bribe and blackmail or selling off official positions, you're finished. Given my capabilities, you probably understand that I'll know where you are, no matter where you run," Wang Chong coldly said. "This lowly one understands, truly. Milord, be at ease. No matter how bold this lowly one is, he would never dare to extort Lord Gao," Bian Lingcheng fearfully said, cold sweat trickling down his face. "Very good. Take these things with you." Wang Chong pointed at a wooden box by his side. Bian Lingcheng raised his head in shock. This lowly one would not dare. At a time like this, Bian Lingcheng would not dare to take anything of Wang Chong's. "I told you to take it, so take it," Wang Chong icily ordered, his eyes like beads of ice. Bian Lingcheng's heart trembled, and he didn't dare to speak again. He crawled up on his knees, his head lowered, and took the wooden box from the table. Wang Chong stared at Bian Lingcheng and indifferently said, "Aren't you going to open it?" "Yes, Sciaces." Bian Lingcheng opened the box, and when he saw what was inside, he froze. Inside the wooden box was a thick stack of gold yuan certificates. The denomination of each of these certificates was enormous. A rough estimate put the total value of these gold yuan certificates at 5 to 6 million taels of gold. Bian Lingcheng raised his head and stared in shock at Wang Chong. "This is 6 million taels of gold. Take it. This is for your service to the country in helping Lord Gao. This money should be enough to satisfy your appetite for a very long time, but if you dare to stick out your hand and ask for more, you'll be executed without question," Wang Chong coldly said. Bian Lingcheng was so drenched in cold sweat that he really didn't dare to argue anymore. "Many thanks, my lord. Go!" Wang Chong waved his hand. Bian Lingcheng had originally believed that his death was certain, but now not only was he not dead, he had come away with a large gift. With his new lease on life, he did not dare to stay a moment longer. However, he had barely walked a few steps when he suddenly hesitated and stopped. "What? You have something else to say?" Wang Chong coldly said. "This lowly one would not dare." Bian Lingcheng trembled, fear emerging in his eyes. It was just that this lowly one thought of a matter and did not know if he should mention it. "It is related to Lord Marquis." Bian Lingcheng emphasized his last sentence. "Speak." Wang Chong carelessly waved his hand. This lowly one heard some news in the capital. Although Lord Marquis rendered enormous service in the western regions and the entire imperial court is discussing how Lord Marquis should be rewarded, the Confucian school has spoken of Lord Marquis with veiled criticism, Bian Lingcheng said. "Oh!" Wang Chong's eyebrows rose, but he quickly relaxed. The quarrel between civil and military officials over the Battle of Talas had been exceptionally fierce, with the Confucian officials led by the Grand Preceptor putting up a staunch resistance to any further battle. Moreover, for his sake, his grandfather had intervened and quarreled with the Grand Preceptor in front of the court. Now that the imperial court desired to richly reward the Wang clan, it was only natural that the Confucian school would object. I understand. I have taken into consideration your willingness to speak of this matter to me. You're dismissed. Wang Chong waved his hand. Whether or not the information provided by a treacherous eunuch like Bian Lingcheng was useful, he had at least been willing to bring it up. This was also evidence that he had not spent the 6 million taels in vain. Yes. Bian Lingcheng bowed and quickly withdrew, leaving Wang Chong alone in the room. Lord Protector General, why did you still give him 6 million taels of gold even though you had firm evidence of his crimes? A voice came from behind, as well as the tapping of footsteps as Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing emerged from the curtain at the rear of the hall. Their eyes flashed as they looked in the direction that Bian Lingcheng had left. Both of them had been present as Wang Chong spoke with Bian Lingcheng. They had originally believed that, given Wang Chong's personality, Bian Lingcheng would be finished. Much to their surprise, Wang Chong had not only spared Bian Lingcheng but had even given him a significant sum of money. This was definitely not the Wang Chong that they knew. Treacherous eunuchs have their uses. Bian Lingcheng's greed may be insatiable, but his abilities are without question. As long as one can subdue his ambitions, he can be used to serve us. Perhaps he might be useful. Moreover, I've already thought of a way I can use him in my plans. Wang Chong indifferently said. No matter how greedy Bian Lingcheng was, he was the one who had allowed Gao Xianji to rise. Without him, the empire would be lacking this Anshi war god. In this aspect, Bian Lingcheng was still a little useful. At the very least, he had been able to pick Gao Xianji out from the crowd and resist Fuming Lingcha's threat to recommend him to the sage emperor. This was one of the reasons Wang Chong had spared his life. Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing remained silent. Wang Chong had not mentioned what this plan was, but they had silently agreed to not ask. Time passed by, and once Bian Lingcheng left with his 6 million taels of gold in gold yuan certificates, Karasin returned to normal. Everything proceeded in an orderly fashion according to the plans of Wang Chong and Feng Chongqing. An entire month passed in this fashion. Reporting. At dawn, a great clamor could be heard from outside Karasin. A horseman rode out of a cloud of dust, crossing the newly built bridge across the Tigris River and riding into Karasin. Reporting to my lord. The messenger entered the hall and kneeled, speaking between gasps for air. Arab soldiers have been sighted 30 li from the city. A force of more than 500,000 soldiers is heading toward Karasin. What? The Arabs are coming again. The rebel leaders bolted up from their seats in agitation. The Arabian Empire had lost more than 1 million soldiers in the battles from Talas to Karasin. No one had expected that they would be coming back so quickly now that the snow had melted. My lord, I'll go and gather the men so we can give them another harsh lesson. My lord, I request that we sortie to deal with the Arabs. The rebel leaders began to turn one by one to the leader of the coalition army, the enthroned Wang Chong. There's no need. Wang Chong faintly smiled, lightly waving his hand before the eyes of the stunned commanders. It's just several 100,000 Arab soldiers. I've already made arrangements. Bahram, is it ready? My lord, everything has been prepared. The army is ready to go into battle at any time and wipe out the enemy. A firm voice resounded through the hall. Bahram was standing nearby like a statue, his body exuding a powerful aura. Very good. Then let's begin. Wang Chong's eyes flashed with an intimidating light as he slowly raised himself from the throne. His body erupted with boundless energy that seemed to make the entire world quake. A battle was imminent. All was quiet outside Karasin, the only sounds being the rushing of the Tigris River and the rustling of the wind. After some time, a rumbling came from the distance, going from barely audible to earth-shaking in just a few moments. Look over there. A voice came from the walls of Karasin, shattering the silence. A moment later, countless eyes turned to see a black tide surging over the horizon. The black banners of Arabia could be seen fluttering over the army, as dazzling as could be. After fighting with the Arabian Empire for so long, everyone was far too familiar with these war banners. Rumble. The army was getting closer and closer like the rising tide. In just a few short moments, everyone was able to see it. This was an army of hundreds of thousands, devouring everything in its path. Even though the coalition army had exchanged blows with the Arabs many times, it was still greatly alarmed by this sight. Moreover, from the powerful auras rising from the army, it was clear that the Arabs had gathered even more powerful governors than last time. Attack! A powerful Arab governor with an aura as vast as an ocean pulled out his sword and pointed it at the imposing walls of Khorasan. Kill! With this order, the Arab cavalry turned into a flood of steel as they swept past the Arab governor and into the distance. At this moment, all other sound was drowned out and the entire world seemed to pale. After a long period of preparation, the Arabs had finally managed to gather another army and launch an attack on the coalition army in Khorasan. Boom boom boom. 30,000 feet, 20,000 feet, 10,000 feet. Right when the army had reached the shores of the Tigris River, there was a creaking of gears as a large black metal bridge extended out of the Arab army, crossing dozens of feet to slam onto the opposite shore of the river. There was a chorus of shouts as the war horses stepped onto the metal bridge and began to charge across the river. The neighing of horses, the clattering of armor, and the shouting of soldiers mixed into a single din. A somber air hung over the battlefield. 1 bridge, 2 bridges, 3 bridges, 4 bridges, as more and more of the sturdy metal bridges fixed themselves onto the opposite shore. A wide path appeared across the Tigris River. A massive stampede of horses surged across it. 500 paces, 400 paces, 300 paces. The shuddering of the earth intensified, yet there was still no sign of activity from the walls of Khorasan. 150 paces, 130 paces, 100 paces. As the distance shrank and the Arabs were preparing to fire off their metal ropes. Ready! There was a loud and bright cry, cutting through the sky like a sharp sword, shattering the silence on the walls of Khorasan. With this voice, the walls of Khorasan exploded with metal banging and clattering. And this sound made all the Arab generals extremely uneasy. A moment later, to the consternation of the Arabs, gaps opened up in the wall of Khorasan, and from these gaps appeared thousands of large metal machines. Each of these machines was loaded with a sharp metal bolt that glimmered in the light of the early morning. Ballisti! A cry of panic rang out through the heavens. Some soldiers who had participated at the Battle of Talas instantly recognized what these machines were. They were the Great Tang Ballisti, which had made all the Arab cavalry on the battlefield of Talas shiver in fear. In the Battle of Talas, there had only been 5,000 ballisti, and that had been enough to give the hundreds of thousands of Arab soldiers nightmarish memories. But the number of ballisti positioned behind those gaps in the walls of Khorasan exceeded 10,000. The entirety of the walls seemed to be packed with these unstoppable machines, these reapers of souls. Tens of thousands of ballisti bristled from the walls, converting Khorasan into a fortress that was armed to the teeth. Even the most resolved Arab horsemen would crumble at this sight. Withdraw! The Arab cavalry who had taken part in the Battle of Talas immediately called out, fleeing without hesitation. They had reacted quickly, but not quickly enough. These soldiers had barely begun to run when the air exploded, and then ballista bolt after ballista bolt howled through the air like dragons as they shot down from the walls of Khorasan. Ah! Screams and thuds filled the air as tens of thousands of Arab soldiers, caught by complete surprise, were nailed to the ground along with their horses. Release! 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 Su-Han stood atop the walls like a god, swinging down his sword again and again. His eyes were cold and his expression aloof, making him seem like the god of death who had come from the underworld to pronounce the fates of the Arabs down below. Boom boom boom. One volley after another descended, a frenzied rain falling upon the Arab armies on the eastern shore of the Tigris River, dealing them a destructive blow. After just 5 volleys, the vast area between the Tigris River and the walls of Khorasan was strewn with corpses and flowing with rivers of blood. In just a few short moments, an army of 50 to 60,000 had been dealt a destructive blow and had been almost completely annihilated. Chill. Fear. Trembling. It had taken mere seconds for a hellish scene to appear before the eyes of the soldiers on the western bank of the Tigris River, and they felt as if their hearts had been turned into blocks of ice. Tens of thousands of Tang ballistae filling the walls had created a terrifying nightmare that almost made them stop breathing. But even more chilling was what happened after. Whoosh! Like a gust of wind blowing past, countless war banners began to rise from the walls of Karasin like new shoots of bamboo. Beneath these banners were countless soldiers, and the tightly shut gates of Karasin suddenly opened, allowing even more soldiers of the coalition army to flood out. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers poured out of the city. At a glance, the coalition army seemed to have just as many soldiers as the Arabs. Not only that, as the coalition army soldiers moved out, many of the great Tang ballistae also began to emerge from within the city. Go! Go! All the Arabs were dumbstruck by this sight. They had originally believed that they would at least have the advantage in numbers, but what greeted them was completely different from what they had imagined. At that moment, all the courage they had initially set out with went up in smoke. Even before the battle had formally started, the morale of the Arab army had plunged to its nadir. Rumble! The first to lose their morale and flee were the cavalry at the very rear, and then all the other cavalry began to follow, fear and panic on their faces. They retreated at an even faster speed than they had arrived. Clang, clang, clang. The Arab generals, afraid that the Khorasani would pursue, took out their swords and cut down the steel bridges before fleeing with their soldiers. Bang! At this sight, all the soldiers on the eastern bank of the Tigris River couldn't help but laugh. Not too long ago, the Arabian Empire had considered itself one of the best at assaulting cities, but even it had a day like this. Before the army could even get close, it had collapsed and fled before the assembled might of the coalition army. Don't chase a fleeing enemy. Let them go. With this lesson, it will probably be a very long time until they dare to act up again. Wang Chong softly chuckled as he looked down from the walls, his expression calm and composed as he exuded the aura of a far-sighted strategist. It was like he could predict everything in the world. Preparedness ensures success while unpreparedness ensures failure. I am very fond of this saying of milords. The Arabs believed that they could strike back and clear away their shame. Alas, they had no idea that all of their actions were within milord's expectations. It's just a shame about the Tigris River outside the city. Otherwise, I would have never relinquished this chance and would have chased them down to the last. Bahram, next to Wang Chong, was unable to restrain his laughs as he watched the Arabs retreat. Boom! With Wang Chong's and Bahram's orders, horns began to blow from the city walls, upon which all the pursuing soldiers began to clean up the battlefield, with one of their tasks being collecting the valuable ballista bolts. In the several months spent running Karasin, Wang Chong had had tens of thousands of ballistae shipped over along with nearly 1 million ballista bolts. This had been one of the most important links in Wang Chong's plan to operate Karasin, and now it had showed its effectiveness. Bang! As the army began to clean up, heaven-shaking cheers could be heard within Karasin. All the common people already knew of the result of this battle and rejoiced. Useless things. In the distant Baghdad, the Caliph of Arabia had just received the news from the front lines. Boom! A boundless energy erupted from the body of Arabia's supreme ruler like a storm, causing the entire imperial palace to shake. All the maids, guards, ministers, generals, and nobles were sent flying by this unstoppable energy and crashed into the floor or the walls. Some of the weaker maids and guards were even knocked unconscious by the impact. Your Majesty! Everyone was panicked and afraid as they fearfully stared at the furious caliph, all of them prostrating on the ground, their blood practically freezing in their veins. We have this largest empire in the world, with the largest elite army, with the most governors and great generals, and innumerable commanders and officers. Can they not even finish off some puny young marquis from the Eastern world? Mutasim III was about to explode from rage. Arabia had been nigh unstoppable since his succession, and Mutasim III had truly embodied the saying of conquer all you see. Many powerful empires had been crushed into dust by the enormous armies of Arabia and forced to submit. But when they encountered the armies of the Great Tang, everything had ground to a sudden halt. In only half a year, 3 large-scale campaigns had all ended in failure. And this was only one army from the Great Tang of the East. If the Great Tang of the Central Plains mobilized its entire force, would he be forced to flee from Baghdad? Your Majesty, it is not that we are too weak, but our opponent is too strong. Tens of thousands of great Tang ballistae stand ready within Karasan, and they have an army of hundreds of thousands. Down below, a noble of the highest status mustered his courage to speak a few words, but before he could finish, bang! The Caliph sent him flying with a single palm.